News Channel 5 Network, this is MorningLine with Nick Barris.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine. Nick Barris here with you on a Tuesday, coming live and direct from the News Channel 5 studios in beautiful downtown Nashville. And I do hope that you had a good evening and you're with us now this morning for a good program. As always, we are coming to you on the Plus, News Channel 5 Plus, cable channel 250 and a lot of the cable systems out there, but you can check on that. We're going to get the phone number up there. We are also, as we've been doing all along, pretty much since this pandemic started, on most of our programs, streaming live on Facebook at newschannel5.com. So you will be invited to join in the conversation by either calling in or you can message us there. So good morning to all of you out there watching on Facebook as well. Big day today for the Metro Council, in the sense that tonight there will be a Metro virtual meeting, council meeting, which you will be able to dial into as well to participate and listen in. But tonight, among other things, they will formally be receiving Mayor Cooper's budget. There's some controversy around it, and we had the show yesterday with Councilman Bob Mendez and the Beacon Center, Mr. Cunningham on talking about, as many of you have been talking about, this proposed 32% property tax increase and what that means. And at this time, if that's the only option, we can get into that today. We can also get into at what point Metro may start lifting some of the restrictions here, and can restaurants open and start seating people, among other things. Where do we stand on all that? And I know many of you, hopefully if you're watching, you have power. Many don't. What's it going to take to get the electricity back up and running? It's odd. We've had so many disasters that have hit this city over the years, from ice storms to tornadoes to floods, and yet they said the storm that came through here the last couple of days knocked out more homes and electricity into buildings than any other storm in history. I mean, just the very worst. So are they getting it back up and running? We'll talk about all that with our guest, who comes on with us every week in studio, but socially separated. About 10 feet to my left is Metro Vice Mayor Jim Shulman. Good morning to you, sir. It's good to have you on.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Did you have power this morning?
No.
I'm sorry.
No.
Now, you said you lost it, got it back, and then that second wave of storms knocked it out again?
So on Sunday night, I saw the storm coming through.
Yeah.
It was I know that it was not as strong as a tornado, but you could see it, just like I assume people can see a tornado coming. I could watch out my window and see it just come by.
Yep.
It knocked out power intermittently for a couple of seconds, came back on, did it again, came back on. So Sunday night we had power. Last night, when the storm was not as bad, knocked the power out.
Go figure.
So I've heard that they started with about 130,000 people that were without power. Giant outage.
That's huge.
NES was putting people back on yesterday. Now people have lost power again. So the number is fluctuating. I'm not sure what the number is right now. You may have it, but I know they're doing the best. And then I also heard yesterday they're having trouble getting crews in from out of state because of travel restrictions.
Right.
So
Yeah, that's the problem.
Maybe a while before we get the power back on.
And there's certain limits they have to take, precautions, just those workers too, with regard to the pandemic and social separation. So hopefully they get it up, and obviously the people watching us right now have power. And again, good morning to everyone on Facebook, and if you want to dial in, 737-7587. Of course, tonight is going to be the virtual council meeting on this Tuesday. And the biggie, and we'll talk about some of the other things that are going on as well, but of course will be the mayor's budget formally presented to you guys, correct?
Yeah, so the big thing tonight is this will be our third meeting as a kind of a virtual meeting. So council members getting more comfortable with it, changing the format a little bit in terms of how we get council members to sign on. But this will be our first public hearing meeting. So as most of you know, the council takes up zoning matters on the first Tuesday of each month. And that's part of what we do. We handle zoning matters that come from the Planning Commission. So the Planning Commission started doing their public hearings a couple weeks ago. And they did the same type of thing where you could call in, and they actually had a place where people could go, believe, in the courthouse and physically be there, even though they kept everybody separate. I'm not sure if anybody went, but tonight we will start back with our zoning bills. What we did was we checked with council members on their bills, checked to see who was going to defer, and anything that was really controversial hopefully has been pushed off. we get a lot of bills on public hearing, Nick, that where people, they're just pretty innocuous and people don't come. So that's what we're probably going to have tonight. But if people want to call in, there's a way to do it.
Well, you know what they're going to call in for. They're not calling in about zoning, Jim.
Well, I know. They're going to call in about the budget.
Right.
But we have a budget public hearing on June the 2nd.
Sure.
So part of the reason people are going to, I know people are going to say, well, why are you having a public hearing tonight? People can't come yet. It's like, well, you can come, but we're going to put you in places and then make sure that there are proper social distancing going on. Again, we don't expect a lot tonight, but we have this major public hearing, the first meeting in June. So this is like a test run for us. So we need to start doing this, because if we're not open back up completely on June the 2nd, which we may not, Governor's Executive Order number 16 expires on May the 18th. But we're hearing that he will probably extend that. That's the one that allows us to meet virtually. Mm-hmm. If it's extended, and we're still under certain types of safer in place, which we will be. We'll be in hopefully in a different phase, though. We have to know how to do this for a public hearing on a budget that obviously has lots of attention.
Well, we've heard plenty of rumors just over the last couple of days that maybe the mayor is looking at moving to the next phase, maybe getting back to maybe where the state is in some of these other counties. Have you heard anything? I know you talk to the mayor every morning. I know that there's going to be one proposal that's going to be before the council today about essential workers wearing masks as they work, and you wonder if that's tying in maybe with the fact that we may lift things and allow restaurants and some of these other businesses to open. I mean, could that happen sooner than later? And I know it comes down to the numbers we get from the health experts.
Here's what I can tell you. So I think there's a bunch of information that comes in from the hospitals around the area, on Wednesday and Thursday. So safer in place is good through Friday. I think what we'll be watching are those numbers that get presented to the mayor's office later this week, and then the mayor will make a call. I know that there's tremendous pressure to open up, at least through a phase one, which is limited.
Right.
But when you have all the counties around us that are now opening, and you can simply get in your car and drive to Williamson County or drive to Franklin and go have dinner or lunch with some restrictions, it puts more pressure on the mayor to figure out a way to open back up. I applaud, this is very difficult for him as well as for everybody else, but trying to make that call when you've got lives at risk, difficult, but you've also got an economy that is hurting, and you got to figure out a way to open that thing back up as well.
Okay, so that will maybe be something that we hear before the end of the week. I think we were talking before the show, if and when the mayor does this, you think it'll be set up in such a way that maybe the opening happens on a Monday, right?
Yeah, so what I hear, small businesses calling, they're calling me as well as everybody else, and they're saying, look, when are we going to open? And we're going like, well, we don't know quite yet. But they seem to want a couple of days to get ready. So, if just again talking to the mayor's office today, not the mayor, but just people in the mayor's office, it's like, well, I'm telling you that what I'm hearing from small businesses is you've got to give them a couple of days. So, if the mayor were open on, I don't think he's going to come out on May the 8th and say, hey, we're open this afternoon, because people aren't ready. Right. You've got to give them a couple of days to get their place ready, to get the employees back, to be ready for this phase one opening, which is limited, but to be ready. So I think you'll see the mayor make some announcement at some point, whether it's this Friday or a little bit later, and then you'll see a couple of days, and then we start.
Okay, and just wanted to maybe follow up with some of the comments and questions we had yesterday. Bob Mendez was on, councilman on the budget committee, and then we had someone on from the Beacon Center. They do the pork report, Mr. Cunningham, and by and large, and I know you're hearing from it, but most of the people that message me here on Facebook as we go along are not just opposed, but strongly opposed to the idea of such a massive property tax increase. Yeah. No one likes that idea. I would venture to guess that most of the council members don't like that idea. But based on what you're hearing from the mayor, that's where it goes. I guess what I wanted to ask you is, based on what I heard from the Beacon Center, I mean, this is a proposal right now, and in between now and June, when it's finally voted on mid-June, the council has a chance to look at potentially other options. And I just wonder, how viable is it to come with some kind of composite? Maybe you come up with some type of property tax increase, but maybe not 32%. And maybe there's other ways, either through additional cuts, which I know it's lean, but maybe there's some positions that can be cut or put down for a while, along with, someone was even suggesting everything should be on the table, including selling off some of the city's assets. What do you think?
Well, so we've been selling off some of the city assets. That's what got us in trouble. When you sell an asset, that's a one-time sell. So people go, well, do that. It's like, well, we have been doing that, which is not really what we should be doing, because it only provides funding for 1 year. Now, some people may say, okay, well, we just need to be propped up for the 1 year, then we can get back to, normal. Who knows? But we did a lot of that before, which nobody liked doing, but that was done. So I don't think that's a really good idea at this point. Again, we were always taught, as I've been taught through government, is that do not try to balance using non-recurring funds for recurring expenditures, because it'll bite you the next year and then the next year. Nick, what I'll tell you is that we've been having this argument for the last 2 or 3 years anyway. So, and Councilmember Mendez would tell you the same thing. They've been cutting, slashing, selling one-time assets. We tried to sell off the parking thing, or at least temporarily convey it, not sell it completely off, but temporarily convey it. There were other things that were on the table about trying to balance this thing without using property tax increases. The mayor particularly, doesn't like property tax increases. So I think he said over the weekend.
Mr. Cunningham with the Beacon Center was actually complimentary of the mayor. He disagrees with the property tax increase, considers that a mistake to that amount. But he says this mayor has inherited a tough situation and has done a lot of the right things, like where he was renegotiating with the soccer and getting a better deal for us and all of that. And one of the other points, and I don't know how realistic this is, Jim, as we go to the break, maybe you can answer this quickly, is the idea of going back to some of the large, be it things like the Titans or things like the Predators or some of the big companies, and say, can we renegotiate somehow some of the deals we've worked out with you to help lessen the load on us, at least temporarily, and see if any of these businesses, being good stewards, not that they would have to, but would be willing to. Could some kind of negotiation like that ever happen, or is that just unheard of once something like that is done?
I think you put everything on the table. Mayor is good at this stuff. He's a good financial guy. So, if there's possibilities, I think he would do it. Again, this is really, really difficult. I'll tell you one real quick thing before we go to the break. But it's like putting something on the table. If you were to bring people in here and say, okay, here's the issue, and you've got to fill what could potentially be a $330 million hole, how do you do it? And then, if you don't want to raise property taxes and you want to decrease that, what do you cut on the other side? And that's when you get into the fights. It's like, I can't cut that. No, that's important. And then everybody argues, and you end up with this thing goes back up. So
let's take a break on that. When we come back, we've got calls for you, and we've got several people following us on Facebook at newschannel5.com. And they're not just in Nashville. There's people actually watching from outside the state and others. Nashville is such a city center, and how it goes in the state, a lot of people paying attention, because I know a lot of people want to come enjoy Music City. We'll take a break, and we'll come back with your calls and comments. Good morning to all of you on Facebook right after this.